The Avances Apex Power V2 and the Avances Apex Power High Top. So I'm going to be batching both of these shoes into a singular overview first impressions video. Your man shoots and edits all his own content, and I just honestly don't have the bandwidth to do singular videos for each of them. And because they are very similar, I feel like it's okay if we just batch them into this singular video. And then when I build out individual reviews, obviously those will be standalone. But 5 first impressions that I have with these models is number 1, the Vision grip is awesome. So if you are wanting a shoe with the maximal amount of grip for sumo deads, strength training, just conventional deads, it's really tough to beat this model. So with this grip, these lugs bite really well, and honestly, it feels very pliable. So what I like about this is that it doesn't really need to be worn to be broken in to get a lot of grip out of the shoe. It's very sticky rubber. So if you are concerned with getting maximal grip, and if you are a sumo deadlifter, and if you are constantly sliding because you are sliding your feet out and pushing out to the lateral sides of your shoes, these shoes I think will both be great for giving you a lot of bite. If you've ever worn the Avances Apex Power, I feel like these shoes are actually a little bit more grippy. Now, how much? That's up for debate because I feel like there's a lot of subjectivity in there. But in the context of just being grippy on different surfaces, whether it's on turf, rubber gym floors, wooden platforms, etc., these shoes do a really good job. I purposely did a lot of heavy sled pushes in these shoes just to test the grip on turf on purpose, and the grip was awesome. The second first impression that I have with both these shoes is that if you like a lot of upper structure with your shoes for training, and more specifically your barefoot shoes for training, both of these options can be pretty good. So neither of these shoes I think have the best breathability regarding ventilation, but that does give you a little bit more rigidity through the upper of this shoe. So for example, with this like mesh upper on the Avances Apex Power V2, it's a little bit heavier, and with this TPU overlay here, I don't think you're gonna have issues with spillover or any form of issues with the upper lacking security. So if you do like a little bit more structure when you're lifting, this can be a great option to look into. And then over here with the high top material is a little bit more built out. So you have a similar mesh material here through the midfoot and through the forefoot, but then the boot back here has a bit more padding. So it does give you a more locked down, structured feeling. So if you are somebody who likes to train barefoot, but you do like having some more material to kind of press into or just feel on top of your foot, that's where I think these shoes can excel. My third first impression is for the high top here. So if you are somebody who likes ankle support, and if you like just a bit more ankle structure to your shoes, and you traditionally like high top shoes, but let's say you're over your Converse Chuck Taylors or your Vans Skate High and you want something that's a bit more minimalist, this is gonna be a great option to look into. They kind of remind me of a wrestling shoe, but more optimized for strength training specifically. And they're, I think, better than most like Sabo deadlift shoes that kind of run a little bit weird through the sole construction. So this model I think will give you a bit more of a width through the midfoot and forefoot for splaying those toes and really letting that arch collapse. But then also you do have a more structured boot here that I just mentioned, so it does give you a nice level of structure. Now, these can be a pain to get on, and I was talking to Basement Brandon about this, and maybe I'm just not good at getting my shoes on, but I feel like when my feet are sweaty and whatnot, these are a battle to get on. So definitely when you're putting these on, make sure you unlace them and go with a hopefully less sweaty foot than my own when you wear them. But that all said, I do like the boot structure. I'm glad that it's actually a little bit thicker because I think in the context of high top shoes, sometimes boots that are super lightweight, they almost like kind of lack that structure and kind of lack the point in general. So having a bit more of a padding to this boot gives you a bit more structure through the internal cup down here and then towards the top of the ankle, which I'm a fan of. So if you are a fan of high top shoes for training and you want to get close to the ground and you want that barefoot shoe feel, the Apex Power High Top will be a good option for that. And honestly, it's better than models than I think like the Fieldgrounds High Rise Knit, which is also a high top barefoot shoe that I've notoriously used for training just because these are a little bit more optimized. My fourth first impression with these shoes is I really dig the width of these models. So I have an E to double E width foot, and I never have an issue with width in the Avances models. These models are similar. The last constructions are very similar to the first iterations of the 1 and the 1.5 for this Apex Power low top here. And so with this model, you don't have an aggressive taper here through the midfoot and forefoot. The toe box is plenty wide towards the end there. And then also what I like too is that despite having a little bit of a rubber overlay here on the medial midfoot, it doesn't feel overbearing. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for folks who have flatter feet and they just hate any form of material. I think you will be plenty fine in these models. And then my fifth first impression with these shoes is I really dig the lateral and medial wrap of the sole here. And this is a feature that I think is really only going to be appreciated by folks who do a lot of lateral work in their strength training and they just want that shoe that can work for a little bit of everything. So this feature is great because it helps give you additional support, and in addition to this heavier upper construction, I think that helps limit some of the spillover. Now what I will say is just like a 5.5 first impression is if you have low volume feet in this V2 here, I was noticing that the laces almost like came together when I was trying to lace my shoe. I have a normal arch, and so I'm curious if folks who have lower volume feet, if you've experienced when you're trying to tighten the shoe a ton, if you have these almost like touching versus having a little bit more room and a bit more security there, like with a more traditional lacing setup. I'm curious what you think about that, but overall, these shoes have been stellar for lifting. When it comes to sizing and fit in these models, you should be safe going true to size. Now, I wear a size 10 in all of the shoes I review. This is the 10 to 10.5 model here, and I find that I have like about an inch or like a thumb's width of length at the end of my toe box. It's not so much that I almost feel like I'm swimming in these shoes, but I also feel like that might contribute as to why I have to crank these laces a little bit tight in this, because it is a 10 to 10.5. So I am a little bit on the shorter end there. So all that said, true to size should be the call. If you are on the fence, definitely reach out to Avancis and ask them what they think you should do, because with half sizes, it can get a little bit dicey, especially when we consider different foot widths and volumes. But all that said, if you do have additional questions on sizing, you could drop a comment down below and I can also help you try to navigate that, in addition to reaching out to Avancis. All right, so now let's do an overview of the Notorious Lift Radix versus the Apex Power V2 here. So with these shoes, they are very similar regarding like their core construction features. Now, when we look at the soles of these shoes, they utilize different types of rubber. However, both rubbers are pretty dang grippy. In the Avancis Apex Power V2, you will have a greater wrap around the entirety of the shoe, whereas in the Notorious Lift Radix, it's a little bit lower. So it does come up and give you a nice wall to brace into, but it doesn't come up as aggressively as the Apex Power V2. And this rubber is a little bit, I think, more thick and rigid, so it gives you a better sidewall to really brace into. When you're looking at the uppers of these shoes, they both have similar meshes through the midfoot and the forefoot here, and then they have TPU overlays around the forefoot. With the Avancis Apex Power V2, you also have a more structured and rigid boot. There's a bit more cushioning back here, and so if you are a fan of a little bit more upper rigidity in your barefoot shoes for training, that's where I think the Avancis Apex Power V2 has the edge. Also, when it comes to pure lifting performance, I think the Avancis Apex Power V2 has a slight edge there regarding like being hyper specific for powerlifting and strength sessions in general. Now, with the Radix, it has a little bit more of like a casual boot back here, so there's not as much rigidity, but it does look a little bit more casual regarding its overall appearance. And so that's why with the Radix itself, and because the lacing system I think has a bit more of a traditional look compared to the Avancis Apex Power V2 that has a bit more of this like close construction to it, especially when you tie them tight, it makes it a little bit tougher to wear on a daily wear basis. That's where the Radix I think can excel. This is a shoe that I'll wear out and about casually, and then also to do some cross training and lifting in, so I get a bit more range with the Radix compared to the Avancis Apex Power. And that's kind of how I've always languaged the Avancis Apex Power. It's a model that works really, really great in the gym, but it's not necessarily a barefoot shoe that I'm gonna rock casually just because one, of appearance, and two, it's just so dialed for lifting. I don't wanna break them down by wearing them casually or running, etc. in them. But with the Radix, again, it's a bit more casual. Both shoes have similar price points, and if you're on the fence of one of these models for lifting and just general lifting at that, either will work, and I wouldn't stress it a ton. Now, that said, if you are a power lifter and you want a singular shoe for powerlifting and so competing, whatever else, and you are very dialed with that training, the Avancis Apex Power V2 will be your best bet. But if you're somebody who is very into strength training and you want something you can also wear casually, I think that's where the Radix takes the edge there. Overall though, super stoked on both these shoes. For $100, I feel you can't really go wrong with either or, especially if your main ask is lifting with some stuff on the side, depending on which model you go with. All right guys, that wraps up my overview and first impressions of the V2 and the high top from Avancis. If you have additional questions on either of these models before my reviews roll out, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.